Before we get to today's episode of 80 More Things, I just wanted to pop in here with a quick disclaimer. The purpose of this podcast is to give people in the community a place to express their opinions and their voice. I just want to be clear that the opinions of our guests are theirs and that Julie and I may or may not agree with their point of view. With that, let's get started.
I could go on listing things off, 80 more things. I just keep on singing these songs till Avery's freedom rings. I said it matters, it really does, I know it matters. This could be you, I said it matters. This could be me, I said it matters.
Welcome to 80 More Things, where we go beyond making a murderer and discuss questionable details of the Teresa Halbach murder case. My name is Fen. You can find me on Twitter at FenMN. You were just listening to Stacy Seabrook, reminding us to keep talking about this case, which is what we intend to do. Give Stacy's YouTube channel a visit and check out the rest of his Songs in the Key of Freedom collection. I will post a link to that in the show notes. If you haven't yet watched the Netflix series Making a Murderer, stop listening to this podcast right now and go watch both seasons before joining us here, or a lot of this won't really make any sense to you. In this episode, we will be continuing our conversation with Mitch Stockdale, who is at Team Stockdale on Twitter. When we left off, Mitch was talking about Ken Kratz and his assertion that we had all been duped by the series Making a Murderer. Let's rejoin the conversation.
No, let's just take out the both seasons of the documentary. Okay, let's say they never existed and we just learned about this stuff through the internet. Let's just say, with everything that's been discovered from us armchair detectives over the last few years specifically, there is more than overwhelming evidence to show there's something wrong here, and we got some we got some skilled people out there that are doing a lot of great research. Fen, Rubber Ducky's out there doing it a lot and everything too. So, and they're coming up with a lot more. So
I think that the documentary just got people interested.
Yes, that's exactly right. That was like the starting point. That was the springboard that brought a lot of people into the case. But it's the documents, it's the photos and the videos and the sound recordings of the dispatch calls and the lack of reports and the 80 more things and then some
800,000 more things. Yes,
yeah.
It's going to be. There's just never been a case like this in history that had so many quote mistakes. They're claiming they made typos and those kind of things. Right from the get-go, the phone call when Teresa was reported missing. What was it written down as? Murder. She was murdered right from the get-go there. So
right, and when they found the key, it was categorized as victim's key, even though they had no clue that they knew it was a Toyota key, and that's it.
Yeah.
How could they have made the leap? How did they make that leap?
Exactly. Or what you said in your episode when you're talking about No Report Jacobs, about was Avery in custody yet? No body was found. Has there a body been found? Is Avery in custody? You just don't jump take leaps like that. It just. So
and again, they didn't think anybody was going to be hearing those recordings. They didn't think anybody was going to be paying attention to that stuff.
Exactly. Or Colburn calling in the plate on his phone and thinking that we would never hear it, later down the road. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the conversation that I was having the other day, last week, in the comments on YouTube with our good
our sweaty friend
attorney. Yes.
Our favorite predator. Yes.
Right. When he was saying that he was saying, surely I can see why the judge decided what she decided, and the judge's decision makes perfect sense to me. And all of this, it's logical to assume that if the bones were found in the quarry, it's logical to assume at this point that Stephen put them there. And if the bones in the quarry were proven to be Teresa, then it's logical to assume that Stephen walked some of the bones over there to dispose of some of the evidence. And I was like, that's a mile walk. It's not just like, you know, down to the corner store. Like, that's a mile, and it's a hike. Like, that's going on the little path and over the berm and on dirt road. Like, and he's carrying a barrel full of bones. Like, that would take a long time, and that would be really taxing, right? So it's not, and he made it sound like it was nothing, right? And I'm like, no, it's not that simple. You're trying to oversimplify it, and that's exactly what he did to the jury. Is, you know, they present it in a certain kind of way. I keep going back to My Cousin Vinny. It's my favorite comedy. But when he's talking to him in the court, in the jail, and they're talking to him, and he's trying to convince him to let him be his lawyer. He's like, I think I'm going to go with the public defender, right? Because he doesn't think he can do it. And he's like, no, this is what the district attorney is going to do. They have to present a case to the jury to try and make the jury believe that you're guilty. So they're going to show the jury these bricks, right? And he pulls out the playing card, and he's going to show them to you in a very specific way so that to them it will make sense. What they're saying will make sense. But what they're not going to show you is that these bricks that they're showing are as thin as a playing card, because they're not showing you the stuff that's devastating to their case, to quote Jim Carrey. I like movies, can you tell? But that's the thing, is that's exactly what the DA does in every case. That's what they do. And so he's going to tell me, of course, it makes sense to me, because this is logical to assume. Okay, you're coming at me, and I told him that, you're coming at me because you think that I am going to respond the same way the jury did. You think that you can trick me the same way by leaving out things that don't support what you're talking about. But the problem this time is I know those things. I'm not sitting here not knowing any of that information you're withholding from me. I know that stuff. So the things you're saying to me aren't going to convince me of anything, because I know what you're leaving out. And that's the problem. So he's still saying those things. He's still saying, oh, well, of course it's logical based on this and this. But he's ignoring the stuff that's happened since then. He's ignoring the stuff that's been discovered since then. And just because it wasn't in the original trial doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now, from a legal standpoint, when you're talking about the case, the only thing, and I have talked about this countless times in the Wrecking Crew, and when we're talking about the Court of Appeals, when people will say, well, what about all of this information? Why can't they use this information to get the case overturned? And the reason why is because the burden right now with what Kathleen Zellner is doing is she has to tear down the case that the state built in the first trial. So all she really can manipulate or address or deal with are things that were included the first time. That's what she has to discredit. So if she can prove that those things were messed up, or they were done wrong, or it didn't happen the way it was supposed to, that's how she's going to get a new trial. And then she can address all that other stuff that wasn't even brought up the first time, that wasn't even, an issue, or didn't help to convict him. And that's why. And so he's acting like, because that's what's going on with the case, they don't matter. But they do matter. Those things do matter. They can't be brought up in court yet, but they matter. And it matters to the truth, because what matters to me and a lot of us is the truth. And what matters is whether or not Teresa gets justice. And he's still hung up on, he doesn't want to be wrong, and he doesn't want to be proven that, he doesn't want it to be proven that he screwed up, and that a lot of them screwed up. And I understand that feeling, but again, that doesn't make it okay.
No.
I'll step down off my soapbox now.
You did great.
I like when Julie gets on her soapbox.
No.
Yeah, Kratz, it's another behavior too with addiction as well. Addicts who are in active addiction have tunnel vision. It's just what they want to see. And there's just nothing that's going to get in the way of that. So you could say all you want about, how he's acting, the way he's talking and blah, blah, that and that. And he's still in that tunnel vision. His way is the only way because he is God in his own little world and everything revolves around him. And that's what addicts do. Mm-hmm. So it's just another example. It just shows that he's still in active addiction. So.
Plus, he's a narcissist on top of that.
On that top of that too, it's all about him. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
And that's addicts. A lot of addicts are narcissists because everything is about our needs, what we want. We want it now because we want it our way because we're number one. So that's just the way it works with the disease.
Well, in his defense, okay, let me back that up. In
defense.
In addiction's defense, I think he was a narcissist before he was an addict. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a personality flaw of his personally. Yeah. Again, I don't know him and I'm not a psychologist. I'm not diagnosing anybody. I just feel like that's something that was there before. That's just how it comes across to me.
It's also known as grandiosity. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, yep. And he definitely displays that.
For sure. So we're talking to Mitch Stockdale, and Mitch, you had mentioned to me that you spoke with a coroner.
Yeah, I did. I've had the pleasure of meeting my coroner here in the county that I live in Ohio, and talked to him about the case, as well, and about the quote unquote destruction of Teresa's body as far as burning. And he was giving me some examples of some temperatures that are needed. When a body is cremated through like a funeral service, the temperature gets around roughly 1800 degrees. That destroys everything what's left of the body, and you get the remains, cremation remains. Now, with the fire that they claim Stephen created, even with the adding of the tires and blah, 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 the maximum temperature would have been maybe 500 degrees, maybe 600.
Oh, wow.
Yes, not even close. So like we see in movies, when a body gets burned in movies, you see a skeletal frame, all the skin's gone in the body, the bones are still there. That's a lot of what you would have seen if her body had been burned in that pit. And then they're claiming, that Stephen was chopping her up with a shovel, unless Teresa did not have any kind of brittle bone disease that was documented whatsoever. So she obviously looked like a healthy woman as well. So there's just, again, no way that he did the chop job that he did with the shovel as far as what they found, especially when it came to the sternum, to the chest area. The chest area is the strongest part of the human body, and it is very, very, very difficult to, go through that, even with a shovel. So, that was brought to me as well, but especially the temperature thing, that's the big part right there. So if she was burning in that barrel, her DNA would have been going everywhere around that pit, and it would have remained in that pit. So it would have been scattered all over the place as well right there. And of course, what did they say? They just found bones. They didn't talk anything about DNA spread all over the place and all this, but the temperature thing is the big one right there. It's not even close.
Wow, that is not even close.
No.
So months ago, when I first joined the wrecking crew, I didn't know hardly anything about this case. I mostly only knew what was in the documentary. I didn't know a lot of this other stuff that everybody had found out. And they were talking about how bones had been found in the quarry. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't even know about that. And as they were talking about it more, Eric Jose had mentioned that some of the bones that were found in the quarry were still articulated, is what he called it. So they were still connected by flesh, which is something that you would find, like you were just mentioning, if you had a body and you were burning it and the bones that were left there, if they weren't moved, might still be articulated. So that supports the idea that that Teresa was burned in the quarry. That was the original burn site, and the bones that were found in Stephen's burn pit were moved there, as opposed to Stephen moving them from his burn pit to the quarry, because if he had moved them to the quarry, they wouldn't still be articulated. They would have fallen apart because he would have had to put them in whatever he was transporting them in, to hike for a mile, right? So that's another thing, that if the bones that were found in the quarry could be tested now and were found to be Teresa's remains, then the fact that some of the bones were articulated is another fact that would support the alternative theory that the original burn site was not the burn pit.
Right.
In addition to the temperature and all the other things.
Yeah.
And why would he move bones from an alternative burn site onto his own property in his own backyard?
He wouldn't. Exactly.
Of course
Right.
not.
But as Mr. Kratz said to me the other day, you can't even theorize hypothetically that if the bones in the quarry are proven to be Teresa's remains, that proves the burn site was not Stephen's burn pit. And the thing is, that fact by itself doesn't have to prove this. A doesn't have to prove B. And he's using logical fallacies. Please refer to my presentation during the Mammothon. Yes, he's using logical fallacies to try and convince people that because A is true doesn't mean B is true. And so therefore it's all false. No, that's not how it works here. And he's trying to misrepresent the situation. So if the bones are proven to be Teresa's remains, then there's a whole host of things that now we can talk about, because now we know that the bones are proven to be her. So now let's talk about all these other things, like the fact that these bones were articulated, like the fact that the temperature in the burn pit could not have gotten hot enough to burn her bones or burn her body to the state that her bones were found.
Yeah.
It's not physically possible. So none of those things, those two things don't matter unless we know that the bones were Teresa. And so if we were able to prove that, or if Kathleen was able to prove that, then she could talk about those other facts, but she can't talk about them yet. And so for him to say, well, proving that it's Teresa doesn't prove this, okay, no, but it can get us there. That's what people need to realize, is there's more to it than just 1, 2.
Yeah.
And we can't test those bones now because they've been given to the Hallbachs.
Yep.
So when we had Paul Capaldi on in episode 3, and if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. It's a really good conversation. But one of the things he said, we were talking about how it came about that the bones had been given to the Hallbachs. And he suggested that the timing was suspect, that it was right before the decision was made on one of Stephen Avery's, like his original appeal. Paul believes, or said that he believes, that they decided that they felt like Stephen's appeal was going to be denied. And so they felt like they didn't need to keep those bones around anymore, so they could do the Hallbach family a solid and give those bones to them to burial, to help them kind of get some closure. But I believe that they were afraid that his appeal wasn't going to be denied, and that these bones were then going to be coming into play and able to be tested again. And they definitely can't have that. So that's why they chose to go ahead and break the law and give the bones to the Hallbach family.
It's very possible. And if we all remember Judge Willis, one thing that I think he did right is that he ordered future testing. When the technology would allow it, in the future, that these things could be tested, and for the defense as well. So that they got concerned about that as well.
So what did he say could be tested? Was it just the RAV, or was it other things also? Does anybody know?
I do. I was just going to say that. The order that was written about future testing, it was in reference to the swabs.
Okay.
The swabs.
And
the swabs.
Yes,
okay.
and the blood inside the RAV.
Okay.
It did not specify the bones.
Okay.
However, when the bones were mentioned, one of them said, well, there's already a statute in place for things like that.
Somebody did
Right?
say that, yeah,
Yes.
because
I
Yeah.
don't
so
remember who
that's
said
the
it.
thing is like that's assuming that that material belongs to the victim, because
Mhm.
if it belongs to the victim, it is covered under that statute.
Yep.
If
Right.
they do not belong to the victim, they're not covered by that statute.
Right. Or
So
if it's unknown whether or not they belong to the victim, it's not covered by that statute, right? So, well, it's not covered that it has to be kept. So, but he said, oh, there's a statute in place for that, which implies that they believe that those bones fall under that statute. Otherwise, why would he say it?
Mm.
Because he said it that way so that the defense wouldn't have it added in for whatever reason. And then they tell Kathleen that she can test the bones, right? But then, and then they give them back. They've already given them back, right?
yeah, they
Yeah.
knew full well they didn't have those
That they
bones for
didn't
her
even
to
have
test.
them, right?
Yeah.
But see, giving them away, like you were saying, giving them away because they are afraid that it's going to be granted, and now all of a sudden there's this evidence that can't be tested because, oh my gosh, now there's going to be proof of their misconduct. It's the same, I liken it to the same type of situation where you're at work and you have an accident and they want to drug test you and you tell them no, and
Mhm.
you get fired for refusing the drug test, but you don't have a dirty drug test on your record now, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing. You refuse to do it, so you still get in trouble,
Mhm.
but there's no record that you did what they think you did.
Yeah. Like,
There's no proof. It's like admitting to it, right? So that's why when you get arrested, you shut your mouth, right?
Mhm.
Because you didn't say anything. Even if you looked guilty, you didn't say anything. You know, proof of nothing, right? It's the same thing. That's why they gave the bones away. And they know this because they're officers of the court.
Yeah. They were just protecting their own rears, so to speak. Put a G
Yep.
version on it. Yeah. Just absolutely.
At Stephen and Brendan's expense.
Expense. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And Teresa's.
And Teresa's
And
piece.
Teresa's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Disgusting.
great.
So I have had conversations with my son about what to do if he finds himself in a situation like Brendan was in, where the police are wanting to talk to you and ask you questions about whatever. So now he knows that he needs to not say anything and ask for a lawyer. And it used to be ask for a lawyer and your mom, but now he's 18, so ask for a lawyer is what he has to say. So even if they were to read him his Miranda warning, I don't think he would understand any of that, and certainly Brendan didn't understand that.
No, he didn't, because as we all know, of his mental challenges, learning not disability, but challenges that he has. At school he has somebody that works with him, so that way he can understand everything that's being taught as well. So when they're placing a piece of paper in front of him and try to explain his rights to him, at least under the law in Ohio, because of his age and because of the mental challenges, the law states here that truly he could not understand his Miranda warning. So he could not waive his rights. So, he should have, unfortunately, his mother should have said, right, the magical word, lawyer, right then and there. So that way the lawyer could have been there to explain the rights that were being presented to him and understand what was going on. Because I just don't think there was a true understanding there to start with. And then, of course, the confession, as we all know, was very coerced. The one big part of that is it's also a giveaway. If you look at Brendan, he was in a corner. If you watch him on that little, where he was sitting, he was scouring. It backed in. He had nowhere to escape except for the cops that were right in front of him, and they're touching his leg and being his buddy. And so, he gave them what they wanted to hear, and that's very sad.
I want to say, when you were just talking about how his mother should have said lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that Weird and Fassbender pulled him out of school and pulled him into that room to question him, and later said that Brendan's mother didn't want to be there. She declined to be there. And the actual truth is she had court that day, and they knew she had court that day. because they called her and told her that they wanted to talk to Brendan and asked her if she wanted to be there. And she said, I have court that day. And they went and pulled Brendan out of school, knowing that Barb could not be there. Not that she chose to let them question him. She could not be there. And as soon as she got out of court, she showed up, didn't she? She was there, right? So she couldn't say he should have a lawyer. She told them, no, I can't be there. And they did it anyway.
In addition to all of that, I truly believe that she and the entire rest of the family was being manipulated by the sheriff's department. All of them were. All of them were manipulated. All of them were afraid of being tagged or being pegged with this murder that they said Stephen did. And if they didn't cooperate, look what they did to Jody. Look what they did to Jody. They worked on Jody and they worked on Jody and they worked on Jody until eventually she had no choice but to turn away. They had a restraining order where she was not allowed to talk to Stephen. So I feel like they manipulated the entire family. And I don't think Barb was any exception to that. I think she was afraid of them.
I agree.
And
absolutely.
in addition, at the end, and this is something the jury didn't get to see, but Barb came in at the end, and we saw this on Making a Murderer. Barb came in, like you said, she showed up as soon as she could. She came in, and Brendan immediately recanted. Immediately. As soon as they left the room and she was there, he recanted. And they were having a discussion, and this breaks my heart every time I see it. They were sitting there together having a discussion. She was asking him what the truth was, and he was about to tell her everything. He had already recanted, said they got to his head, and they burst into that room so fast to stop that from happening, because the video was obviously still rolling.
Right.
Sure was.
And they did. They stopped it.
And you're right. They were waiting, and the second they thought something was going to hit the fan, they were right back in there to arrest him. That was it.
And she confronted them first thing. Did you pressure him?
And they denied
because
it.
she knew. She knows his body language. She's his mother. Nobody knows him better than she does. She knows his body language. She knows when he says something, what he means. And that was her first thought. Did you pressure him? Did you push him? Because that's what she thought too, and she wasn't even there.
Right.
So how could anybody not see that? I don't understand. And you're right, they had him cornered. Completely cornered. They were crowding him. Like they had him surrounded. He was like in the corner like a little kid, like, I'll tell you whatever you want to hear just so that I can go to math class.
Yeah, exactly.
Or whatever, 6 hour. If it was math, I don't remember what class it was, but he had an assignment due just so he could go back to school. He was, I'll tell you whatever you want. You know what I mean?
And this had been the culmination of many conversations with him. Many.
Fourth.
And the night before this, they had taken him and Barb and put them in Fox Hills Resort for their protection, as they said. And they were grilling him late at night, on a school night, late at night, after 10 p.m. There's no record of this. There's a transcript that we can read, right? But there's no recording of this, which there is supposed to be, but there isn't one. And they say that their equipment was faulty and it didn't record.
Then how did they get a transcript?
Exactly. Good question, Julie.
Did they have a live transcriptionist with them at 10 o'clock at night? Do you know how expensive that is? Because it's really expensive, and I can tell you that because I worked for a transcription company. It's really expensive. So if they had a live transcriptionist, I'd like to see the receipt.
There's no way they had a live transcriptionist.
No, they didn't.
But they had already gotten Brendan to agree that he had seen from the bus, that he had seen Teresa, because all the other kids had seen her and the bus driver had seen her, when we all know that there's no possible way that any of them could have seen her. We know that now. But they didn't convince him that he had seen her, but they convinced him to say that he had seen her. So this is something they had been working on him for days and days, and they kept him up late the night before, grilled him for however long they did, and then they pulled him out of school the next day alone and grilled him for what, 4 hours?
Well, it
5
was
hours.
5 hours was the total thing from when he got there to when it was finished. They weren't grilling him that entire time, but for most of it they were.
And it's criminal what they did. It's criminal. I just
is.
can't.
I'll say absolutely. It was horrifying to see, and as we saw in the appeals, some of the judges did agree that the confession was coerced, and my buddy, who's the judge, said he would have tossed the confession right from the get-go just on the Miranda issue, right there, right to start with, because someone should have been there to explain it to him other than the cops. So right there, that should have been tossed right there. But of course, what are we talking about? Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that read technique is not supposed to be used on vulnerable people like Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it's not my job to assess IQ. No, but it's your job to read people.
Mm-hmm. They knew what they were doing.
They
Sure
knew
they did.
exactly what they were doing.
They just needed some extra for Stephen's conviction. So you get that. It was the icing that they needed just to look good, in their eyes.
Well, and not only that, but Brendan was Stephen's alibi.
He
So,
was.
Mhm.
So they had to eliminate that. They had to get rid of Stephen's alibi. So in order to get rid of Stephen's alibi, they got, as Kathleen Zellner put it in her motion, they invented this confession.
How many times did he, was it 78 times or something like that? Did he deny it or something along the way? I can't remember the words that he used that he denied. That's something, that if you look in the transcript of it, it's just, yeah.
I don't know.
I can't remember. It just, yeah.
Despicable.
Very sad. It's sad is what
And
it is.
he sits in jail still today because of it.
And he's a child. When he was on wrongful conviction there a couple of weeks ago, when he was, and they gave him a chance to say anything that he wanted. What did he talk about? Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I cried. I really did. I came home and I cried at my wife's shoulders because I said, he's a baby. He's 30 years old and he's a baby.
He's such a sweet person. And if anybody wants to brighten Brendan's day, please send him a letter. I will put the address down for him and for Stephen as well. I'll put addresses down so you can write him a letter. And I do want to mention on that note that this is a labor of love. I don't make money off of this podcast. And so for those of you who are asking how to support the podcast, I think it would be awesome if you have extra money. Everybody's got extra money, to send some to Stephen and Brendan's canteens, because they have to pay for literally everything from shampoo to soap to toothpaste to books, whatever they have to pay for themselves. So I will put links to how you can write to them, as well as links to how you can donate to their canteens. So for those of you who have asked how to support the podcast, please consider sending some money to help support them instead.
I actually haven't listened to that podcast yet because I know it's going to make me cry.
Yeah.
And I've had enough other things making me cry lately, so I haven't listened to it.
Yeah, bring your tissues and prepare yourself, especially the end when he gets the chance to talk.
Yeah, I will.
I lost it.
He's very sweet.
I was getting ready for work when they did the press conference about the clemency petition, and I was trying to do my makeup and I was starting to cry, and I was like, damn it, I'm trying to get ready for work. Stop it.
Well,
so,
his social worker came on and talked about him, and it just,
talking about how it was burger night and drawing pictures, and I was like, I want to give him a great big hug.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe, because you know what? I've been to prison. And I know how it feels to be in a place like that. Yeah. And I know what being in a place like that does to a person. And I was only there for 8 months. I can't even imagine what being in a place like that would have done to me after 13 years, 14 years. I don't want to imagine, but I can't imagine. All I know is what it was like for 8 months. And to see how positive Brendan still is, and to see what a good heart he still has and how kind he still is, that speaks volumes to me about who he is as a person and how there's no way he could have ever been involved in something like this. People call Stephen's integrity into question all the time and say, how can you defend somebody like that? And my response is always, okay, just because he may have done some things that are questionable doesn't make him a murderer. Just because I've made bad decisions doesn't make me a murderer. But when you look at the person that Brendan is, there's nothing you can say. Nothing.
Yeah.
That even, there's no way. There's no way. And it breaks my heart that these people think that it's okay to let him sit there because they don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I'm going to restrain my F-bomb. But just know it's on the tip of my tongue right now.
Absolutely.
You hear that, Mark Hodenut? She didn't say it.
Just for you, Mark.
Oh, exactly. Pom Pom, you were kind enough to share. I also went to prison myself. Mine was only for 3.5 months, but it was a consequence of my alcoholism, but it helped me bottom out. And you're talking about the expenses of their canteens. Everything is overpriced on the menus there as well, as far as the toothpaste and the snacks and everything like that. It's all double what you buy in a store. So, that's why they need that help. So just to get those few things as well. Toothpaste is $4. It's ridiculous.
And it helps you feel like a human being when you're in a place like that. You feel like you're not a member of the human race anymore. Like you're completely outcast, you're cut off from humanity. And yeah, you get visits, but it's the way you feel. And if you haven't been in that situation before, you can't relate to it. You can't understand how it makes you feel. And there are people out there who I've seen going, if you're in prison, you don't deserve to be able to have chunky peanut butter. You don't know what it feels like. Having chunky peanut butter makes you feel like you don't want to die every 10 minutes. Chunky peanut butter, yes, it's that serious, I promise. People don't get it. And they just, and that's how I felt, knowing that I did what I was there for. Being there and knowing that you didn't even do it, like I can't, the strength.
Especially from such a young age. And
Right.
Stephen too. Stephen is in the same boat. He went to prison for 18 years for a crime he did not commit. And people do tend to forget because it's kind of a footnote in Stephen's story, I guess, at this point. But he went to prison for 18 years from age, 20? He was very young at the time. Was he 20 or 21?
21, yeah.
21.
He basically grew up in prison. Yes, and he had babies.
He had babies that, yes.
And
he just got married, everything was going well, completely ruined his life, yes. And he was there, the first time, he was there longer than they've been there now. He was there.
Mm-hmm. It's despicable.
It is. Yeah. Oh, not mad.
Oh.
And I see that picture of Brendan graduating from high school with his cap and gown, and he just looks so sad, and it makes me sad for him because he should have been able to graduate with his friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's so strong.
We don't give him enough credit. I mean, he is probably the strongest person I've ever seen for what he has to endure.
I really hope that when he gets out, I mean, I know this is up there on my list of dreams with winning the lottery, but I really hope that when he gets out that I get to meet him and give him a hug someday. That would be nice. I think a lot of us wish that.
I think so too. Yeah, I think probably.
Yeah. I would really
he's
like
gonna have to line up.
Oh,
yeah, he's gonna get lots of hugs.
Lots of hugs, yeah.
I hope he's a hugger.
I have a feeling he is.
Yeah, he seems like he's probably a hugger.
Can I finish with a couple of thank yous? Would that be possible?
Absolutely. So our guest today has been Mitch Stockdale. Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Mitch. You have a lot of great insights.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. The both of you are just doing incredible work. I've enjoyed the work that you've done so far, and I'm looking forward to the future episodes. While I got a second, I do want to thank some people as well along the way. First of all, my wife, Barb, who puts up with me every day because I talk about making a murder, in this case, every day with her. So thank you, Barb. I also want to thank True Seeker out there for getting me onto the thread. And then, of course, my close friends out there on the thread, our friend Paula and our friend Sarah over in the UK. So thank you all. I love you all so much.
Yay.
Yay.
Awesome. And I think we're all in the same boat with our families and loved ones. They have infinite patience for me talking about this case all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I mean, my son even went out on the banner tour and took pictures for us so that we would have a cameraman. And he spent the whole day with his mom and a bunch of crazies with signs.
Well, the first time I met your son, well, the only time was at Raleigh. So
Raleigh.
he came to Raleigh. And Mitch, next year you're coming to Raleigh, yes?
I've already talked to Paula about it. We're already talking about getting me there. I hope that this year next time I won't have a heart surgery and then an infection afterwards that kept me away. So I'm definitely going to be there. It's already on my calendar, and I really, like I said, Paula basically said I'm going to be there. Period. So
good, good for you, Paula. Thank you, Paula.
Good. So I'll meet you then too, because I'll
absolutely. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So that'll wrap it up for this episode of 80 More Things. If you have a topic that you want us to cover, or if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode, visit our website at 80morethings.com and let us know what you want to talk about. While you're there, don't forget to click the link to sign the petition to pass the Juvenile Interrogation and Protection Law. Also, be sure to check out Stacy Seabrook on YouTube. You can find a link to his channel in the show notes and on the website. And also, bringbrendanhome.org. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Let's keep talking about Avery. Yeah, let's keep talking till he's set free. Oh, you just listen, I think you'll see why it matters. It really matters. I could go on listing things off, any more things. I just keep on singing these songs till Ava